My adventures have taken me to Nepal, Africa, India, China, and Indonesia, where I've gained a much deeper appreciation for both the environment and the earth, as well as the kaleidoscope of people, cultures, religions, foods, of all those who call it home. For me, faith and stewardship of the earth are inseparable. For me, God is very close when I'm climbing a mountain, paddling a canoe, kayak, or sleeping under the stars. I never tire of enjoying the wonder and splendor of the natural world. The other day, most people get in trouble for texting and driving. I almost drove off the road when I was looking at a hawk perched in a tree. My sister was in the car with me and is like, okay. Anyway, my work to guide our church in becoming an Earth Care congregation began as a capstone project for a certificate in sustainability for communities that I was pursuing with the University of Colorado. As the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. That's a common theme, and the more concerned I got. So I went on to pursue a Master's of Natural Resource Management at Virginia Tech's Center for Leadership in Global Sustainability. Sorry, I always get this flipped. We spent an entire session, which was thrilling for me, on the role of religion and the environment. Well, they called it sustainable development, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but we'll get into that later. And I'd like to share a little bit about what I learned. First, some facts. With about 2 billion members each, Christianity and Islam are the world's two largest religions. 70 to 80% of Americans identify themselves as Christian. Now, this is a survey when people always want to say the right thing, so I'm not sure it's quite that large, but opinion polls show that 82% of Americans believe that God had some role in creation, either exactly as Genesis describes or through some God-guided evolution. Only 12% side with Darwin. Most of the world's religions include stories about creation, yet they say very little about environmental ethics. None of the 10 Commandments speak about it, and most of the Bible focuses on relationships between God and man or between humans. Very little, even though the Bible talks about nature and wilderness and the environment, it says very little about the relationship between humans and the environment. So according to Genesis, God created the earth first. Light, night, soil, wind, rain, air, all the elements that are needed for life. And then he created every living thing that moves on the earth. Only when he had everything in place did he create Adam and Eve. The earth is God's first church, a majestic and awe-inspiring cathedral. God judged all of his creations as good. All that he created was valued. And since man was created in God's image, man too should value all of creation. Genesis 1:28 says, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." But later, which to me is more important because it comes later, Genesis 2:15 instructs us to till and keep the earth. Both of these words mean to guard or watch over. Thus God entrusts his creation, the world, to us, humans, and instructs us to watch over and care for the earth. Rather than exploiting nature for personal gain, humans should be servicing it. Tilling and keeping become not just an obligation, but a form of worship. Caring for the environment is not really a new concept, and you're going to hear some common themes here about government. 1866, the term ecology was first used. 1872, the term acid rain was coined. 1892 was when the Sierra Club was formed. 1905, the National Audubon Society, and the word smog was used. 1918 was the National Park Service. In 1851, Thoreau, who I quoted earlier, addressed the Massachusetts legislature. I don't think it was called legislature then, and it stated that in the wilderness is the preservation of the world. That was 1851. While American history includes a separation of church and state, we heard that the government has not, they've tried, but perhaps now it's time to build a bridge between government and the church, or the state, church and state. For over half the long list. 62, Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring came out. That ignited sort of a concern about the future of birdsong with DDT affecting the eggshells. So DDT was eliminated, banned. 1963, we had the Clean Air Act, and in 1970, Earth Day started. So the government, 1972, the Stockholm Conference. 1989, the Montreal Protocol. 1992 was the Earth Summit in Rio. That established 3 pillars of sustainable development. So that was 3. 1997, the Kyoto Protocol, which the US did not ratify. 2000, the United Nations Environmental Program launched 8 Millennium Development Goals. These were to be achieved by 2015. 2012, 20 years after the original Rio Summit, was another summit where they wrote a report entitled The Future We Want. In 2015, COP21, a global climate change pact, was created known as the Paris Accord. 2016, 150 nations. Everybody thinks this is an issue. 150 nations met at the United Nations Environmental Program Summit to create the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. That took the 8 Millennium Development Goals and created 17 now called Sustainable Development Goals. And in 2017, Trump withdrew us from the Paris Accord. Clearly, governments have had plan after plan, and they've stood by and watched as the deadlines and goals go flying by. Frankly, I think it's a lot more hot air that's contributing to climate change. So, thank you, Nancy. So in my mind, it's time to put intentions into actions to get local and involve communities. We've heard churches are getting involved, communities are getting involved, businesses are getting involved because they realize it's good for their bottom line. So today there's a growing chorus of voices advocating for an environmentally oriented theology. Most towns have at least one church. Many have more. I mean, how many Presbyterian churches are represented here? So start here. So regardless of your background, political affiliation, economic status, religion provides a common ground, a starting place where people can meet, talk, and work together on environmental issues. How we live, showing respect, appreciation, and reverence to God and His creation is a form of worship. Rather than polarizing, religion can serve to unite economy and ecology as ways to understand the relationship between working for a living and worshiping for life. The Earth Care program and others include a lot of tools and references, including some on environmental justice, which is not the natural side of sustainability, but the social side. Unlike the Old Testament, where God uses nature to test and punish humans, He shows His displeasure through pests, famines, floods, and other ecological disasters. Nature is used to test the soul. The New Testament teaches love. One of its foundational principles is treating your neighbor as you would want your neighbor to treat you. That gets kind of, anyway. But is it just your neighbor next door? Or is it your neighboring town? Those who live in a neighboring state, neighboring country, or even a neighboring continent? Environmental pollution and exploitation of resources leads to great inequalities and injustices to many regions around the world. I see Karen sitting up here. These injustices and inequalities should be an area for religious concern and action. A 1990 papal decree by Pope John Paul II affirmed these concerns, stating, and I quote, "The most profound and serious indication of the moral implications underlying the ecological problem is the lack of respect for life, evident in many patterns of environmental pollution." Pope Francis, in his 2015 encyclical, states, "Never have we hurt and mistreated our common home as we have in the last 200 years. He went on to say, "The exploitation of the planet has already exceeded acceptable limits, and we still have not solved the problem of poverty. There's still over 1 billion people in the world that live under $1.90 a day." He also said, "The climate is a common good belonging to all and meant for all." And there's lots more quotes in his encyclical, but I'll stop there. In 1991, Nobel laureates and other respected environmental scientists circulated a critical letter addressed to the American religious community, where they complained about the apathy, if not complicity, of religious institutions towards contemporary environmental programs. American history, however, also demonstrates that religious motivations have played a key role in many conservation efforts. People motivated by their deep faith, such as Gifford Pinchot and John Muir, helped create one of the modern world's strongest environmental conservation and preservation efforts here in the US and made us a leader. Pinchot founded professional forestry and advocated, advocated for progressive conservation in order to build and protect a strong Christian nation. John Muir, also drawing on his Calvinist theology, he was Scottish, emphasized God and nature. He strove to protect these great cathedrals that God created and to baptize weary urbanized people in nature's healing graces. I don't know about you, but traffic on 295 coming up here yesterday, it was like, where's some natural things to be baptized in? He convinced President Theodore Roosevelt to create the National Park System to preserve the country's most magnificent and unique natural places, with Yellowstone becoming the first national park in 1872. Most religious institutions now have some sort of statement or program or policy on a wide variety of environmental issues, including energy conservation, animal welfare, sustainable agriculture, acid rain, oil exploration, and reducing materialism and consumption. And that list was taken from the Presbyterian Church's policy. Justifications for these include arguments to protect God's creation and reduce human suffering. Religious-based conservation arguments have also appeared in environmental media, mainstream media. The Nature Conservancy published Viewing Nature as God's Creation, Common Interest Between Faith Communities and the Nature Conservancy. Outside magazine, one of my favorites, profiled God's Greens, in which it described God's Greens as environmental activists armed with scripture and a righteous respect for nature, who have taken up the environmental fight and are waging holy war on behalf of embattled nation, or embattled creation. Not sure I like their words, but their meaning comes through. The Sierra Club and the National Council of Churches recently teamed up to protest drilling in the Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. These examples are just the tips of large icebergs of faith, which hopefully won't melt anytime soon. Enough international activity and support were present in 2000 to justify a United Nations review of worldwide religious programs promoting environmental agendas. This was summarized in an 80-page publication, which I have not read the whole thing. In 2002, the World Watch Institute, a very high-profile organization, published a similar review and argued for the potential of greater collaboration between religious and environmental institutions. People, activists, philosophers, governments, and people, everyday people, are realizing that religion provides people with a language and a rationale to think about nature and humanity. Few other cultural institutions are so ideally suited to deal with the deep and moral questions about how we live and treat nature. Religion provides the ideals and principles that shape and guide many lives, values. They offer a vision of a good life that's not based on consumerism, materialism, self-interest, how big your car is, how big your house is, how much stuff you have, how many mini storage places you have to store all that stuff. Religion strives to answer the bigger questions, the meaning of life, and how we should treat others. In the beginning, the first book of the Bible, or Genesis, God creates the world. The last book, Revelation, describes, and I quote, "A third of the earth, a third of the trees, and a third of the grass burned up, and many died from the water because it was made bitter." That's Revelation 8:7 and 8:10. Meanwhile, today, Cape Town, South Africa, narrowly avoided running out of water totally. They put in place some extreme measures where people were given 13 gallons of water a day. Just for perspective, in America, each one of us uses over 100 gallons a day on average. So there are many other cities and towns and countries that are in danger of running out of water. As an Earth Care congregation, First Presbyterian Church of Haddon Heights is moving in the right direction. The 4 areas covered in the program are worship, education, facilities, and outreach. We've taken some steps to recycle, reduce energy waste. We've done an energy audit and reach out to others. I think it was the Women's Circle did a fundraising campaign for Kiva, saving dimes in water bottles. And was that the Women's Circle? Yeah. And Kiva is an organization that provides microloans to women. Kiva, the stats on women repaying loans is far higher than that of men repaying loans. And women they care for their families, and that's what they're wanting to. They put their girls through school, and they provide homes and shelters for their families. Our Mary Muckers assist others after natural disasters, such as Hurricane Katrina. And we come together to teach others about the environment and learn about community programs like we did in Cherry Hill. I'm thrilled when somebody shares a clipping with me. I just heard when we were sitting in here. Nancy, was it? No. It was, I did. Anne said to me, I was going to send you this clipping because I saw it about putting the lids on bottles. I got an email last night from somebody talking about New Jersey adopting the renewable energy program. I didn't have a chance to read the whole thing. And people all the time at church will come up and hand me an article. So the awareness is growing, and I am just thrilled, tickle pink. So I hope you'll join me in helping your congregations become an Earth Care congregation. I started with a quote from Thoreau, and I'm going to end with one from the 14th Dalai Lama. We have larger houses but smaller families, more comfort but less time, more education but less understanding, more knowledge but less insight, more experts but more problems, more medicine but less good health. We have reached the moon, but we have problems crossing the street to meet our new neighbors. We invent more and more powerful computers and produce more and more information, but there's less communication in our lives. We get more and more in terms of quantity, but less and less in terms of quality. These are the times of fast food and bad digestion, of inflated egos but little personality, of high profits but superficial friendships. These are the times of showing off with no substantial background. And to end with Thoreau, heaven is under our feet as well as above our heads. So it's time to create our heaven here on earth now. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes. I've known you and what you're doing, but I'm wondering if you could share a little bit for anybody who might not have a congregation aware of what PCUSA offers.
Right.
How did this all begin?
When I was doing my certificate, I did a lot of exploration, read a lot of the faith statements, and found greenfaith.org, which is an organization that works with religious organizations. And they have a program to certify as well. But I also went to PCUSA's website, pcausa.org, and they established this. They were actually one of the leaders in establishing these programs. So they have a certification program. There's an application that you fill out in the 4 areas. To become first, you have to earn a total of 25 points, I think it is, in each of the 4 categories. And there's a certain number of points, how many sermons you have based on the environment, how many, if you've done an energy audit, so, LED light bulbs, signs that turn off or the automatic motion sensor lights, things like that. Do you not use paper plates? Do you not use styrofoam cups? Do you, things like that. Then there's education. How many does your vacation Bible school focus on, the environment? Things like that. Then we did facilities worship and outreach. Do you work with other churches? So we get points for me being here today. Do you reach out to others that, to help them take the right steps? And then every year you have to be recertified. Your session has to sign the Earth Care Pledge. We put a banner in our church. We got points for that. I write an article for our newsletter. We get points for that. I haven't gotten them to use reusable communion cups, but we're working on it.
This month.
We are?
Yep.
We're going back to the last ones?
We have them.
So anyway,
One will wash them.
I will watch them. Once a month, I will watch them.
And Dawson has to watch.
Anyway, so I actually have, I have applications if anybody wants to look at one during lunch, and it shows all the things that you can earn points for. So it's very easy. We have to form an Earth Care team, so we ask for volunteers, and so I encourage you to do it. It can be done by one person, so take a step.
Dawson, you didn't mention that you got us all to buy mugs.
Mugs,
With our names on them, so that we don't use styrofoam mugs anymore.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
right. Well, here's a funny story about our effort to buy mugs.
Oh, yeah.
I hate styrofoam, no offense to the lovely women who have prepared this delicious meal. It just does not ever go away. So I'm president of the deacons, and when you're president, you can do a lot. So I encouraged our deacons to do a well, it wasn't really a fundraiser, it paid for the mugs. But we each got mugs, and you could put your name on it. And then we had a mug rack in the kitchen where you can hang your mugs. Well, one Sunday, we're all drinking out of our mugs, and somebody actually read it. We forgot the T in Presbyterian. So we got more mugs. Now we have guest mugs, and we hope they won't really read them yet. So we try, and we keep trying, and that's the important thing. Any other questions? Thank you very much.